Just for a few minutes, I want to discuss the concept of green ketchup. You see, several years ago, Heinz, the company Heinz, came out with a new color in the ketchup department, and their marketing strategies were amazing. The new color was scheduled to be green. And before the release of this product, they were doing interviews with various people on the streets of New York, asking them what they thought of the new green ketchup. When they arrived in Manhattan, one lady who was interviewed began to complain, and she said, "Green ketchup? It's devastating. It's terrible." And another man said, what is this all about? What do you mean? Red ketchup is like a minhag. It's a tradition. How could they do this to us and change the red ketchup to green? And somebody else said, "Green ketchup? This is sacrilegious. It isn't right. It's not our way." And B'kitzur, the whole country was up in arms about the new green ketchup that Heinz was about to release. And as I listened to the interviews, I remember thinking, what's everybody getting all upset about? What's the problem over here? What's the big deal? So Heinz wants to turn the traditional red ketchup into the color green and be a little bit more creative. What's wrong with that? Ma baya. And the answer I came up with was that people don't like change. You see, even the most insignificant change, like changing the color of ketchup from red to green, it could throw people off. They can't deal with it. No one likes change. People like it when things are predictable. People like things the way they are, whether it's on a personal level, on a social level, on a religious level. Everyone has a certain level of comfort. They're happy where they are. They don't want anything to change. They don't want anyone to disrupt their equilibrium of life. For some people, change is like a monster that they're frightened of. That's a human condition. We're all like this to a certain extent. But change is inevitable, ladies. You know, I once heard someone say, "We change whether we like it or not." And that person is so right. Take, for example, the idea of family, in particular our children. They're young, and we get used to their youth. We get used to sending them off to school. We get used to nurturing them, advising them, guiding them, and then suddenly they grow up. Life changes, and we're confronted with different dilemmas, and now we have to marry them off. And it's difficult to deal with it at times because it requires some form of change. In such a case, people go through what's called the empty nest syndrome. They have a hard time dealing with a change of reality, with the fact that the children are no longer under their auspices and that the children are now leading their own lives. Another example of what we're speaking about today is a midlife crisis. Parents grow older, and now it's the children that have to tend to their needs. These are all changes that are inevitable. And now the children have to adjust to the new reality. Whereas they were the ones being taken care of and pampered all these years, now they're the ones who have to be the caretakers of the people who were once taking care of them. So as human beings, we have to learn how to deal with the changes of life and ultimately accept the changes that arise. But unfortunately, we live in a society that's addicted to complacency, to self-righteousness, and even to smugness. Everyone is happy with their status quo, from the most religious person to the most mainstream and even to the ones beneath the mainstream. Everyone's playing what we call the happiness game. They say, "No, leave me alone. I'm happy with the way my life looks, with the way things are. This is who I am. I'm happy with my status quo. Don't rock my boat or stir the waters." Many people think that their life is wonderful, that they're doing great, and what they're doing is perfectly fine. They can't see outside of themselves, and sometimes it's also hard for some people to look inside themselves to reach for the truth and change their existing reality which may not always be aligned with the emet. Taking action is one of the reasons that we don't like change and we don't like to talk about it or hear about it. Besides comfortability and predictability, the reason we don't like change is because the change means that we have to admit that we made a mistake. If I'm going to start behaving and speaking properly, what I'm basically saying is, all these years that I wasn't doing this act, I was wrong. And nobody, ladies, is ready to live like that. No one wants to admit that for so many years they've been doing it all wrong. That's not easy. So we'd rather fight tooth and nail and risk losing the most valuable items in life just not to be wrong. And this concept isn't only true in religion, but look at history. When the famous Galileo, the famous Italian physicist and astronomer, discovered that the world was actually round, not flat, guess what happened? The Inquisition put Galileo on trial because they deemed his new idea apikorsut, it's heresy. They decided it's blasphemy. To them, saying that the world was round was considered a terrible, terrible thing, blasphemous. And as a result, they wanted to kill him. They wanted to execute him. What did Galileo do? He offered the tribunal an opportunity to use his telescope, to read his thesis, and to determine on their own, based on his proof, if what he was saying was correct or not. A good idea, no? You think that the inquisitors did that? Absolutely not. They refused to see his evidence. They were resolved to the idea that the world was not round, the world is flat. They weren't willing to see the proof before their very eyes because they knew that the minute they're going to see it with their own eyes, they're going to have to change their point of view. And if they have to change, it means they were wrong all along. What do we learn from this? We have to remember that Hashem called Adam, Adam. He called mankind Adam. Why? Because the essence of the human being was such that his roots come from the Adamah, from the ground. Hashem took the dust of the earth and he formed mankind. Adam is like the Adamah. Why? Because the earth, the ground, is constantly being toiled. The farmer has to plow it. He has to till it. And then he has to harvest it and plow again. And then he has to water it. A farmer is constantly working the Adamah, the ground. This is what Adam is. This is what man is all about. Man is about growing, about making efforts, about working, about changing. This is what life is all about. Life is about constant change. It's about continuously advancing and becoming better. Therefore, we should try to accept change, ladies. Borei Olam tries to move us from our status quo position in order to create a change in us for the better. A parent wants his child to achieve great things in life, to grow and better himself. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the same for you because he loves you.